How's it going, guys? It's John Holt here with The Audio Journey, helping make music production accessible to all. And here on this channel, what I do is tutorials focused towards beginners and beyond to get you started in music production. So welcome to the first ever live stream. Never done a live stream before here on The Audio Journey, so thank you for being here. Today I think I've got something really interesting to share with you. It's a website that Ableton have just released. Now Ableton make a piece of software called a digital audio workstation, which you might be familiar with, and essentially what it does is allows you to make beats, bass lines, melodies, chords, vocals and stuff, and output it as a song. So what I'm going to do is get stuck straight into this website, which is called learningmusic.ableton.com. So if you type that into your browser, learningmusic.ableton.com, you're going to come up with the same site that I'm at here. So what I'm going to do is bring that up on the screen now for you. Here we are. So let's make me nice and small down there so you can see the screen. So this is the first page that you're going to come to. And as I say, I think this is going to be really, really helpful for people that maybe are interested in making their own music. But when they sit down in front of the software, say if you've downloaded a free trial of Ableton, you kind of sit there and think, I have no idea where to start. And if that's you, then you're certainly not alone. And what this website is aiming to do is break down sort of the key elements of making music, to make it less intimidating, really simplify it down, and then build up brick by brick and give you a solid foundation on how you can start making your own music. So let's get stuck in. Now the getting started section, which is the first stage that we're at here, is going to talk you through and show you what elements go into a song. So if we start this off here, we've got a drum beat. Now I'm just going to pop these headphones back in so I can hear what's going on. Right, so we've got that drum beat going on there. And then you can add a bass line over the top of it. And then some chords. And then a melody. You can take elements out to see what it sounds like, maybe when there's a breakdown in a song. So yeah, you can play around with this 4x4 grid, add elements, take them away, build up some melodic elements, before you put a drum beat in, so you can wait for a bit and then put a drum beat in. And yeah, it's a really good place to just sort of play around and understand the building blocks that go into a song. So it gives you a really good foundation in that sense as to what you're actually going to be making when you go on to make your own music. So let's move on to the next section, which is beats. Now, this is something that I think is going to be really valuable, because making beats is something that you do using MIDI. And MIDI is a concept that goes over quite a lot of people's heads for quite a while when they're starting out, especially myself. So I think this kind of simplified version of how MIDI works, especially to build up drum beats, is going to be really useful for beginners. So it allows you to just look at a pattern, play it through, and see what's actually going on and see what's making what noise. So let's give that a play through. So you can change the tempo here, so we can speed that up, slow it right down, and for those of you that don't know, the tempo here is in BPM, which means beats per minute, and there are certain tempos that certain genres of music tend to be made in, and we come on to that a little bit later in this website, but yeah, it's just useful to know bits of the terminology like that as you're going along. So yeah, BPM is beats per minute, tempo, and it's just basically the speed of the song. So as I say, you can reset this to go with the example beat that it's given you here, or you can stop it, you can completely clear it, and you can build your own beat up sort of as you go, just to get your head around what these MIDI notes are doing. So let's have a go at that. Let's start with a kick drum, and a term that I want to make you familiar with, if you're not familiar with, is 4 to the floor. So bars tend to work in most kinds of music that you hear on the radio, most popular kinds of music, on a 4x4 basis. So you'll be counting through a song, and you can count through 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's just a really common sort of it's called a time signature. That's really commonly how music will work. So a 4 to the floor kick drum is just a kick drum on every beat. So it's going to sound like this. We're going to go up to a housey kind of tempo, so you can really hear what a 4 to the floor is going to do. It's not massively exciting on its own, but there you go. That's a 4 to the floor kick drum. So the kick drum is the first drum that we've got there. Then we've got a clap, and then a couple of hi-hats. So what I'm going to do is just build up a bit of a pattern on the fly for you, to a really basic one, just to show you how it works. Throw a couple of claps on there. There we go. So you can throw some hi-hats in there. Couple extra closed hi-hats in there to make it a little bit more interesting, but the point is you can really play around with this, really play around with the tempos, throw that up and down, see what kind of things you're going to get. And a lot of making drum patterns is happy accidents that you're going to come across when you've not put a MIDI note somewhere before. You're just throwing them about randomly, and you hear something and you think, oh, actually, yeah, I really kind of like that. So it's something that I definitely encourage, really having a play around in here and seeing what you can come up with. So that's one of the sections there. I've made some notes down here, so I'm just going to be referring back to these to see if there's anything that I've missed. I went through and made some notes earlier, but I think that's everything on the drum pattern. So let's move on to what these sounds actually are. We can see here we've got 2 MIDI clips that are the exact same pattern, so let's play them through. Kind of electronic beat, maybe a bit hip hop. And then the exact same pattern is going to give us this sound. Which is much different, as you can hear. It's the same pattern, so they're playing the same amount of notes in a bar in the same places, but it sounds completely different. And when we scroll down, we sort of find out why. Essentially, this section compares an acoustic drum kit with an electronic drum kit. So you can hear the difference between the kits here, and you can also play these with the keyboards. So if you click the keyboard button just here, 1 and 2 on your keyboard are going to play these drum sounds. There we go. You can also click on them as well, like I was doing initially. Let's turn that off, and look a little bit further down. So a little bit further down, we've got like the whole kit that you can play. So this is the whole electronic drum kit, which you'd hear in electronic music. So techno, trance, house, they're all going to use mainly electronic drum sounds, which you can hear a sample of here. And this sounds a lot like a 909 kit, which is commonly used for house, and it's modeled on a really old drum machine called the 909, which you'll have heard in countless songs without even knowing it. And then we've got the acoustic drum kit, which is like a live drum kit. So if you had a drummer in a room, in a band playing a drum kit, it's similar to what this would sound like. As opposed to being an electronic drum kit, it's a real drum kit sound. Mainly heard in guitar music. So if you were listening to somebody like, I don't know, The Who, or like an actual guitar band, this is the kind of drum sound that you would expect to get. Obviously they vary a little bit, but this is the kind of thing you'd be getting. So let's turn the keyboard on and listen to the different kinds of patterns that you can make. So you can have a play around with it. A little bit laggy, obviously, as it's on the internet, but yeah, it does lag out quite a lot. But I think that's because I'm live streaming. But yeah, you can have a play around and see what kind of patterns you can come up with. And then later on in the website, as we'll see, you can go in and start forming your own patterns to see how these really build up. So from a beginner's standpoint, I think this is really cool because you can understand the elements that are in like in a drum beat and understand how they start to build up to form things that you might have heard before. So if you think of a song that you know of and think, I wonder what different bits they've used. So I can hear where the kick drum is now. I can hear where the clap is. I can hear the hi-hats, and I can hear how they vary throughout the song. And yeah, I think it's a really good thing to be able to get your head around as a beginner. So let's have a look how we're doing down here. Let's see how you guys are getting on. View on the watch page. Let's have a look. Wow, thank you for getting in on the live chat, guys. How's it going, Eric? Good to see you. Jay, good to see you. Where am I from? I'm from Bicester, which is near Oxford in the UK. Cool. So if you guys have any questions, then feel free to drop them in the live chat section, and I'll get round to them and answer them while we're streaming. So let's move on to the next section of the website. Beats and tempo. So this is where we can again start to build up our own patterns now that we've got a little bit of that knowledge under our belt. And you can fill in the kick drum if you're struggling a little bit. That'll throw a 4 to the floor kick drum in as we were mentioning. So let's have a play around and see what we can come up with in here. Try and make a more like hip hop kind of beat. Sounding all right. There we go. Oh, there. And we'll throw that up there. There we go. There we go. So, as I say, like a lot of happy accidents are where some really cool drum sounds come from. So, spend a bit of time and throw some MIDI notes about in here and see how you get on with it. And it's something that is really going to help you progress and understand how you make beats, and then allow you to experiment with that maybe inside Ableton Live if you progress on there later. And obviously later on in this course you're going to get the opportunity to mix this with bass lines and chords and see how you really do build up a song. So let's move on to the next section. Tempo and genre. So as I mentioned earlier, different genres, so hip hop, trance, reading off there, house, dubstep, drum and bass, they all are normally done in like a different tempo. So dubstep is normally about 130, 140. House is a little bit slower. Hip hop is even slower than that. And then drum and bass is up there and it's really, really fast. And that's what sort of characterizes it into its certain genre. They're not hard and fast rules, but it's what people tend to go by. So it's a good thing to bear in mind. So have a look on this list here and see what the genre that you want to make is generally done in. And then try and stick to that when you're making drum beats. So let's speed up to drum bass. We haven't done any of that yet. So that's how fast this is going to go. But I don't think this pattern's going to really suit. Yeah, it sounds a bit funny. Let's try and get the classic drum and bass thing going here. That's probably where the kick would be. That's it. obviously if you're a drum and bass producer, this is terrible. I'm really sorry, but it's a good example of how you would build up a like the bare bones of a drum and bass drum beat. And as I say, happy accidents, just throw some MIDI notes at it, a little bit of variation somewhere, instantly adds a little bit more life to it. So yeah, I think that's looking pretty cool. So let's move on. I want to jump out of the beat section and come into notes and scales. So I think pretty much everyone will have a concept previous to this of low pitch and high pitch, but just in case you don't, there's a little demonstrator here that sounds a lot like the clangers of what high pitch and low pitch, the sort of progression between the two sounds like, which, as I say, I'm pretty sure you'll have a good idea of anyway. Then we've got some notes here so that you can hear how they progress. Again, you can whack the keyboard on for that. So let's go on to how you would then make patterns with this. So again, I think this just really flows really quite nicely and lets you learn a little bit at a time. Maybe you can come back to this at another date, but real bite-sized chunks of the real essential building blocks that you'll be using to make your own songs. So we've got a few basic notes here, A, C, D, E, and G, and I made this little pattern a little bit earlier. You can easily make these into chords as well. Again, just sort of playing around and seeing what you can come out of it with. But right, let's clear that and see how it looks. And again, you can adjust the tempo there and make some little melodies in different genre sort of tempos. So let's move on to keys and scales. So this is where music theory starts to come into it a little bit. Now, keys and scales can be a little bit intimidating if you've not done much music in the past, and I for one definitely came into music production, sorry, I saw the mic was clipping there. I for one came into music production with not a lot of background, if anything, in music theory. I hadn't done music since year 9, so I was about 13 when I started producing music, and yeah, it really left me thinking, am I actually going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to make songs that sound good if I don't know music theory, if I don't know how to play chords and what notes go with what and what's going to sound good, what's going to be in key? But it's definitely something that is not as intimidating to learn as it sounds. So it's not a case of having to be able to read sheet music and spend countless hours playing scales before you're going to be able to make something that's in key. And that's something that I've made a separate video on that I'll pop in the description below when I upload this video to YouTube. Basically giving you a little bit of a cheat sheet as to how you can write in key every time without having any background in theory. But let's jump into Ableton's section here. So it starts off with the major scale, and the major scale is typically kind of happy sounding. It's what you'll see in like commercial pop music and generally happy sounding songs. So these are the notes that are present in it, and you can play through these again on the keyboard if you like, and mess around and sort of see what that sounds like, and you'll probably hear that a few of these notes sound like maybe a melody in a song that you know, and that's common to find that. So let's hear what is going on here. Put this back in so I can hear what's going on. Okay, so just a really simple melody in C major there. So just to explain why that's the C major scale is, C is the root note, which is where the scale starts on a piano keyboard. So piano notes always start from a C and go all the way back up to a C. So they go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then start again, and then it goes on that cycle all the way up the piano. So the way that you break down sort of keys, scales, and bits like that, is into three main sort of key terms that you need to know. The first one is a key. So a key is a set of notes that musically go together. So if you play notes that are all in the same key, they're going to sound nice together, and you can make melodies out of it and bass lines out of it. A scale is another thing that you need to know, and basically a scale is a set of rules for how far apart the notes are in a certain key. And then the root note is another key term that you need to know, and as I just mentioned, that's where the scale starts on the keyboard. So let's take the scale C major, for example, and break that down. So major is the scale type, and that determines how far apart the keys are on the keyboard. And then C is the root note, so that's where the scale will start. As it mentions here, they're sort of happy or bright sounding if you're in a major key. And then let's move on to minor scales. Typically kind of sad and dark sounding, used a lot in like electronic music. But yeah, don't read too much into those terms. If you're not understanding that at the moment, that's completely fine. What I would recommend if you're looking to make music in a certain genre, say you want to make hip hop music, for example, just Google common keys that hip hop music's made in, and stick to one of those keys. And then once you've got a bit of a grasp of them, you can branch out and start using different ones. But you can get a really good idea from really simple Google searches, like what kind of keys are used in your genre of music, and then you can go and experiment in them because they'll be recommended for a reason. So yeah, definitely have a play around with those and see where you get. So let's have a look at the C minor scale. So this uses the black notes on the piano keyboard, whereas the C major scale is just all of the white notes. Again, you can mess around in here and make some melodies, which would be in the C minor scale. So let's have a look at that. Again, just sort of playing around and throwing some notes in, and you're probably getting the idea now that it really is just sort of playing around with those kind of things. As long as you know that you're in a certain key, then you know that it's going to sound good. So for example, I like to make house music, tech house, deep house, and I know that a really common key to make house music in is F sharp minor. So what I do is I do a Google search, notes in F sharp minor, and I keep that up on a screen, or if I'm using it a lot, I'll print it off and leave it on the side. And then even without knowing music theory, like I don't, I can look at that and say, right, these are the notes on a piano keyboard that I can use. And then when I'm putting notes into a MIDI keyboard like this, I know that if I'm using the notes on here, I'm going to be in key. And that's a really important thing to know, and that's a really important thing to be able to do. And it's so much easier than people think. So there we go. That's my little sort of cheat sheet, if you were, for writing in key without actually having the music theory knowledge. Now, I'm not knocking it. Like, if you are going to start taking music production seriously, definitely learn music theory, because it just speeds that process up. Instead of having to Google it, you'll just know it, which is going to really speed up your workflow. But I would recommend that for now, it's not something that you should be afraid of to get stuck in with music production, because it's not going to hold you back. So let's have a bit of a power through this section. So now it's given us a MIDI keyboard like you would actually find in Ableton or in any other piece of software, which has all of the piano keys available. So the sharp and flat notes are the black notes, if you can picture that, and then the ones with just a letter and no flat or sharp are what the white notes would be. So it's also got the little warning that because we've got all of the keys there now, it's possible to make something that will be out of key. So it could sound unusual, wrong, or just a little bit weird. So these first notes, C and D, are both white notes, so they're both in the C major scale. but it's rare that you'll find that two keys that are next to each other will sound good. It's rare that they'll sound good. So let's bump this up a little bit, play this. So the first notes are C and D, and then this is C sharp or D flat and then C. So that second one doesn't really sound that good. So the first one sounds nice and the second one sounds a bit weird. Neither sound amazing, granted, but yeah, I think you probably get the idea that that second one just doesn't sound melodic or flowing really. So there we go. So here we go. This is going to be the last little section that I do on sort of beats and melodies, and what I've done is basically programmed in a drum pattern, which I'll clear out and we'll do this all again from scratch, but it lets you pick. So what I was talking about earlier in terms of scales, keys, root notes, you can select here. So the root note, where the scale starts, we can select up here. So I'm going to go for C sharp. Well, actually no, we'll stick in a major scale. So we'll go C and then major. So what we've got just here, excuse me, is the scale type. We're going to stick with major, and then down here we've got the little drum section that we had earlier on in the course. And what we can do is fuse together a little bit of a melody and a little bit of a drum sequence. So let's have a look at that now. Let's see how that little melody sounds. Pretty basic, but it'll do. And let's put a 4 to the floor kick drum in again. And then build up a clap and some hi-hats on that. There we go. So let's listen to the drum pattern. So really, really basic little house beat going on there. And then the melody that we had going on just up here. Again, pretty basic. So let's start the drums going. And then we can bring the melody in over the top, which is kind of how a song would progress. And then see how that... There we go. Now you probably won't be rushing to listen to that on Spotify, but it really does illustrate nicely how you can build up those patterns and combine them in order to make your own songs. And then you've got these sections just here, and then if you go back right to the Get Started page, you can see how we've expanded out from these drum sections to actually making our own drum patterns, our own sort of melodies and whatnot, and it really flows nicely. And I think for a beginner, it's a really good process to go through to just get your head around, as I say, how these elements work, how they expand out, and how you actually make them yourself, as opposed to just using loops, and build up really nicely into sort of how you can start making your own music. So there we go. Just to give you a little bit of an overview as to how much more depth this goes into. It takes you into examples from real songs that you would know. So here we've got Joy Division, Love Will Tear Us Apart, which is a great tune, and it shows you how that main really famous melody was made, and shows you it in MIDI form. So if we give this a play, oops. There we go. So it's got quite a lot of examples like that. It's got it for beats as well. So We Will Rock You, classic Queen track, is a really, really simple drum beat, obviously, but it shows you it's sort of programmed in MIDI there. Right. Bit of Beyonce as well. There we go. Let's have a look at the MIDI track for this. There we go. I'm not going to sing it for you, but there we go. That's how that works as well. What else have we got here? Ride. I thought it was a different version of Ride. But yeah, I'd say have a look through those as well. It's also got song structure. So The Mother We Share, really nice tune about churches. It gives you a bit of an insight as to the different sections of songs that you'll have. So, bit of an intro, which comes in with a little bit of a melody, and then you come into the verse. You've got a drum beat that's come in, and you've also got a bit of a bass line going there as well. And then you can hear how things sort of progress and change when it goes into a chorus, breaks back down into a verse, and gives you a good idea as to the fact that you'll have a few different drum beats, a few different bass lines and melodies. As we saw in the front section, you had 4 of each that you can use to build up an arrangement. So yeah, as I say, I'm really quite impressed by this with Ableton, and it's something that I definitely think I'll be recommended to beginners. And there's definitely sections in here that could even help more advanced producers or intermediate producers really get a good understanding of the basics and how these things work. So when it goes into theory like major triads and minor triads, that can be useful. Song structure as well, and then advanced topics, it really does go quite in depth. Like there's stuff in here that would definitely help me that I'm going to have a work through. So yeah, and then it shows you where you can go on from there, which is basically into the full version of Ableton, and that's where you can really go much more in depth with these kind of topics, and start to learn how you can start to build up much more complex arrangements and start to make really professional kind of sounds. So there we go. I hope this has been a nice little insight into this new site from Ableton, learningmusic.ableton.com. It's only at the beta stage at the moment, so I'm really quite excited to see if they add anything else to it and how it progresses and how it ends up in the final release version, and then sequential updates from there. They do seem to be a really kind of innovative company, and looking at everything from their software to their hardware like Push 2 and then to this, it really does seem like quite a complete package in terms of what they're offering. So definitely head over and check this out. There's definitely going to be more resources on Ableton. Most of the videos that you'll see on my channel are on Ableton. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on these guys, and if you're looking to get into music production, then I think Ableton's definitely a good place to start. So to top off, I just want to say thank you very much if you're still here and watching for joining me on this live stream, and if you're watching on the replay, then again, thank you very much for watching. If you've got any questions, then feel free to drop them down in the comments below, and I'll be happy to get in there and chat to you and answer them. Head over to Ableton if you want to have a go on this site, say learningmusic.ableton.com, or you can download a free trial of Ableton Suite, which is the full version with all of the sounds and plugins included, which you can get a free 30-day trial of. I'll drop a link in the description below when I upload this about that. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it from me. So as I say, I hope you've enjoyed. On this channel, I do a weekly video, so be sure to check back, and if you found this interesting, then definitely hit the like button and subscribe for more content from me. And there we go. Don't be a stranger, get in touch. I want to see your progress. If you do start making these kind of tracks, and if you do get stuck into Ableton, then let me know how it's going and let me know if I can help at all. And have a good evening, or whenever you're watching this. So I've been John Holt with The Audio Journey, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.